Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. We love to take these journeys of deep exploration, and today we're diving into a book that's really captured the world's imagination. It's called Ikigai, The Japanese Secret to a Long and Happy Life. So we'll be unpacking some of the key insights, and more importantly, how you can actually apply these to live a more fulfilling life.
I think what's really cool about this book is it's not just like a self-help book. It's really rooted in research. And specifically, they look at Okinawa, which is this island in Japan that has a remarkably high concentration of centenarians. So people living to 100 or even older.
Yeah, it's like a blueprint for longevity, isn't it? And one of the things that they really highlight in the book is this concept of hara hachibu. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, harahachibu. It basically means eating until you're 80% full. So instead of like stuffing yourself until you're totally full, you kind of stop a little bit before that.
Well, that makes sense. So it's not about like measuring out your food or anything, but just really being in tune with your body's signals, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's about being mindful rather than just mindlessly eating.
I know. I've definitely been guilty of that sometimes, just eating until you're uncomfortably full. And I always regret it later.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's amazing how much of a difference it makes when you actually pay attention to those hunger and fullness cues.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not about deprivation either. It's about finding that sweet spot where you're satisfied but not overly full.
Exactly. And it's interesting because the book also talks about how a youthful mind is just as important as a youthful body.
Yeah, totally. It's like our brains need exercise too. And one of the things they highlight is the work of this neuroscientist, Shlomo Bresnitz. And he found that new experiences can actually help keep your brain sharp.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about doing crossword puzzles or Sudoku. It's about like actually stepping outside of your comfort zone and trying new things.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be something huge. Even small changes to your routine can make a big difference.
That's a good point. What's something new you've tried recently?
Let me think. Well, actually, just this week I started learning.
That's awesome. I love that you're always learning new things. It's so inspiring. All right, so let's move on to something that I think a lot of us struggle with, which is stress. Now, the book acknowledges that stress is a natural response, but chronic stress is obviously not good for us.
Right. And that's where they bring in this idea of mindfulness, which is about being present in the moment and filtering out all the unnecessary information overload that can contribute to stress.
So it's like turning down the volume on that mental chatter, right?
Exactly. And it's amazing how much of a difference it can make when you start to bring more awareness to your thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, instead of just going through the motions on autopilot, you're actually present in the moment.
Right. It's like think about those times you've been, snacking while watching TV. Are you actually tasting the food or are you just kind of zoned out?
Oh my gosh, I do that all the time. I'm definitely guilty of that. So you're saying mindfulness is about bringing more awareness to those everyday experiences, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's about really savoring those moments instead of just letting them pass by.
I love that. So do you have any mindfulness practices that you find helpful?
I've found that even just taking a few deep breaths before starting my day can make a huge difference. And sometimes I'll do a little bit of meditation too. How about you?
Yeah, I've been trying to incorporate more mindful walking into my routine. Just, paying attention to the sensations of my feet on the ground and the sounds around me.
That's wonderful. I love that. So we've talked about mindful eating and mindfulness in general, but another key concept in the book is this idea of flow. Have you ever experienced that feeling of being completely absorbed in a task where time just seems to fly by?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like when I'm writing and the words are just flowing effortlessly, or when I'm lost in a good book, it's almost like entering a different state of consciousness.
Right. And the book suggests that finding flow in activities that are aligned with your purpose is one of the secrets to a happy life.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where your passions and skills intersect and you're completely engaged in what you're doing.
Exactly. It's like they give this example of the sushi chef, Jiro Ono, who's been making sushi for over 80 years, and he still finds so much joy in it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
80 years. And he's still passionate about his work. That's incredible. And I think it really challenges the traditional notion of retirement, doesn't it?
It definitely does. It suggests that finding work that truly aligns with your ikigai can be a source of lifelong fulfillment, not just something you do to earn a paycheck.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to ask our listeners a question. When was the last time you experienced that state of flow, that feeling of being completely in the zone? What were you doing? Think about it for a moment and really try to connect with that feeling, because it's a powerful reminder that We all have the capacity for deep engagement and joy in our lives. So now that we've kind of set the stage with these core concepts, let's dive into some of the more challenging aspects of finding and living your Ikigai, because it's not always easy, right?
Definitely, there are going to be obstacles and setbacks along the way, but the book also provides some really valuable insights into how to navigate those challenges and even turn them into opportunities for growth.
Okay, so let's talk about the the book doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. In fact, it takes this concept of resilience, that ability to bounce back from setbacks, and it takes it even further.
Yeah, they introduced this idea of anti-fragility, which comes from the work of Nassim Taleb, and it's not just about withstanding shocks, but actually becoming stronger because of them.
So it's not just about bouncing back, it's about like using those challenges to propel yourself forward.
Exactly. It's like turning those setbacks into advantages.
That's a really powerful concept. So think about your own life for a moment.
Oh,
What's
yeah.
one area where you could build more anti-fragility?
Yeah.
What's a challenge you faced that ultimately made you stronger?
That's a great question. I think for me, it would have to be.
It's so interesting to think about how those difficult experiences can actually shape us in positive
Hmm.
ways, right?
Oh, absolutely. They can make us more resilient, more adaptable, more compassionate, It really is amazing how we can kind of use those tough times to our advantage now. Another fascinating aspect of the book is that it explores the importance of social connections, especially this idea of moai, which is a really unique concept from Okinawa.
Moai. Okay, I'm not
Yeah.
familiar with that one. Tell me more.
So basically, it's all about forming these really strong social support networks, like close-knit communities that provide a sense of belonging, purpose, and shared responsibility, all those things that really contribute to a longer and happier life.
So it's like having those people, you can always rely on those who share your values and support you through thick and thin, kind of like your tribe, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's that sense of community and connection that can really make a huge difference in our overall well-being.
Absolutely. Makes you think about your own social circles, doesn't it? Do you feel like you have a strong moai in your life?
Well, I'm definitely fortunate to have a lot of supportive people in my life, close friends and family who I can always count on.
That's great to hear. It's a good reminder for all of us to really nurture those important relationships.
Yeah.
All right, so we've talked about social connections, but the book also dives into the eating habits of the Okinawans, which I think offers some really valuable insights for anyone looking to improve their health and longevity.
One of the most interesting things is their emphasis on plant-based foods. They eat a ton of colorful vegetables, fruits, and whole grains, and meat is consumed in much smaller portions compared to what we're used to in Western cultures.
Yeah, it's kind of like that Harahachibu principle again, right? Moderation and balance.
Exactly. And what's really cool is they have this practice of eating with all your senses. They really savor their food, paying attention to the textures, the flavors, the aromas, even the visual presentation of the meal.
Wow, so it's not just about fueling your body, it's about turning eating into a truly mindful experience.
Right. It's about being present in the moment and appreciating the nourishment that food provides.
I love that. Have you ever tried to incorporate this mindful eating approach into your own life?
I have. And honestly, it's amazing how much more enjoyable meals become when you really slow down and pay attention, you know?
I can imagine it's like you're actually tasting the food instead of just mindlessly shoveling it in.
Right, exactly. It's about bringing that awareness to every bite and really appreciating the flavors and textures.
That's awesome. All right, so you've talked about diet, but what about movement? What kind of physical activity do the Okinawans practice?
Well, the book emphasizes incorporating gentle movement into their daily lives. Things like walking, gardening, Tai Chi activities that are low impact but still offer tons of physical and mental benefits.
So it's not about pushing yourself to the limit or spending hours at the gym. It's about finding ways to move your body that feel good and are sustainable.
Exactly. It's about listening to your body and finding activities that you enjoy and that you can do consistently.
I'm a big believer in that. I've found that even a short walk in nature can do wonders for my mood and energy levels. What about you?
Oh, totally. I love being outdoors and connecting with nature. It's so grounding and restorative.
It really is. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but one thing that really stood out to me in the book was the emphasis on finding purpose in everyday activities.
Yeah.
It's not just about having a grand life purpose, but also about bringing mindfulness and intention to those seemingly mundane tasks.
Absolutely. That really resonated with me too, because it kind of challenges the idea that we need to be doing something extraordinary to feel fulfilled. It's about finding those moments of joy and flow in the simple things like cooking a meal, tending to your garden, having a meaningful conversation.
So it's about finding the Ikigai in the everyday, right?
Exactly. It's a reminder that purpose isn't some distant destination. It's a way of being, a way of approaching life with intention and gratitude.
That's beautifully said. So I want to ask our listeners a question. What are some ways that you can start incorporating this idea of finding purpose in everyday activities into your own lives? What are some small steps you can take to bring more mindfulness and intention to those seemingly ordinary moments?
I think a simple but really powerful practice is to choose one everyday activity, something you do regularly, and approach it with a fresh perspective. Like instead of rushing through it on autopilot, really slow down, pay attention to the details, and find something to appreciate about the process.
So it's about turning those have-to-dos into want-to-dos by shifting our mindset.
Right. It's about finding the joy, the purpose in the present moment, even amidst the ordinary.
I love that. So simple, yet so profound.
Mm.
All right, so let's keep exploring some of these amazing concepts from the book because there's so much more to unpack.
There's so much power in shifting our perspective, isn't there? Now, speaking of perspective shifts, the book introduces this beautiful Japanese concept called wabi-sabi. Have you ever heard of that?
I have. I've come across it, but I'd love to hear you explain it.
So wabi-sabi, it's all about finding beauty in imperfection, in the impermanent, in the incomplete. It's a way of appreciating the natural cycle of life with all its cracks and crevices.
Oh, I love that. So instead of striving for this unattainable ideal of perfection,
Yeah.
we can actually find beauty in the flaws.
Exactly. It's like those Japanese kintsugi bowls. Have you seen those? Where broken pottery is repaired with gold, so they actually highlight the cracks instead of hiding them.
Oh, yeah, those are stunning.
Yeah.
It's like they're saying that those imperfections are part of the object's history and beauty.
Right. It's such a powerful metaphor, and I think it applies to us as humans, too. We don't have to be perfect to be worthy or valuable.
Absolutely. Those imperfections, those life experiences, they're all part of what makes us unique. And it's interesting because the book connects this idea of wabi-sabi to anti-fragility. Remember how we were talking about that
Oh,
earlier?
yeah. It's not just about bouncing back from challenges, but actually becoming stronger because of them.
Right. So how can we apply this wabi-sabi philosophy to become more anti-fragile? How can we embrace imperfection to actually grow from those challenges?
Well, I think it starts with a conscious effort to shift our perspective.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on what's wrong or what's missing, we can choose to see the beauty in the present moment, in the flaws and imperfections that make us and our experiences unique.
So it's about letting go of that need for control, that striving for an idealized version of ourselves and our lives that doesn't really exist.
Exactly. It's about acceptance, accepting ourselves and our lives as they are, with all their messiness and imperfections.
I love that. But I have to admit, it's a lot easier said than done sometimes.
Mm.
And our minds are so quick to judge and criticize. What are some practical ways that we can start to cultivate more wabi-sabi in our lives?
One practice I find helpful is to try to find beauty in those everyday imperfect moments. Like notice the way light dances on a cracked sidewalk, or the resilience of a weed pushing its way through concrete. Appreciate the worn texture of a favorite sweater, or the laughter lines around a loved one's eyes.
It's about finding beauty in the unexpected, right? Those little details we often overlook.
Exactly. And it's also about embracing imperfection in our own creative endeavors. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, to experiment, to let go of the need for everything to be perfect. Sometimes the most interesting and beautiful things emerge from those imperfections.
So true. I think we can all relate to that, right? Any other tips for building that anti-fragility?
Yeah, remember how the book talks about creating redundancies? It's
Yeah.
like diversifying your income streams, your skills, even your social circles that way. If one area of your life takes a hit, you have other support systems in place.
It's about spreading the risk, right? Not putting all your eggs in one
Yes.
basket.
And don't be afraid to take calculated risks,
Yeah.
Step outside your comfort zone, pursue those opportunities that feel a little scary but exciting.
Yes. Embrace that growth mindset.
Yeah.
Believe in your ability to learn and adapt. So much great advice here as we wrap up our deep dive into Ikigai, the Japanese secret to a long and happy life. What's one key takeaway you hope listeners will remember?
Yeah, I think the most important message is that finding and living your Ikigai isn't about some grand life-altering transformation. It's about those small, mindful choices we make each day. It's about how we approach our work, our relationships, our health, our connection to the world around us.
Beautifully said. It's about finding joy and purpose in the everyday moments, in the imperfections, in the challenges that shape us. So to our listeners, I encourage you to reflect on what truly brings you joy, what makes you feel alive, and most importantly, what small steps can you take today to move closer to a life filled with purpose and passion? Remember, the journey to finding your Ikigai is a lifelong adventure. Embrace the imperfections, learn from the challenges, and never stop exploring what it means to live a life that is truly yours. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.